Hello everyone. Once again welcome to PM Networking. Hope you all are doing great. Guys, today in this video we are going to cover one important topics of switching, that is private VLAN. So topic for the day is private VLAN. We will understand theory plus practical. I am going to show you configuration part also of private VLAN. But before discussing anything about private VLAN, try to understand the requirement of private VLAN, why we need it. Okay, so see guys, this is topology in front of you. Here I have one topology R1, and this router is connected with one switch, and switch have some computers like four computer 1, 2, 3 and 4. PC1 have IP address 10.1.1.1, PC2 have IP 10.1.1.2, PC3 have IP 10.1.1.3 and PC4 have IP 10.1.1.4. Okay, let's say my requirement is these users should not be able to communicate with each other. These users should not be able to communicate with each other. So what I can do, I can put these all interfaces in different VLAN. Let's say I have put this interface in VLAN 10, this interface in VLAN 20, this interface in VLAN 30, and this interface is in VLAN 40. Now what will happen? Now this user, okay, these user cannot communicate with each other, but now these computer cannot communicate with this router as well. Getting my point? Now these computer cannot ping to router as well. Let's say here this router is connected with one ISP here. So these computer cannot access internet now. So this is problem, right? So my requirement is what here? My requirement is these users should not be able to communicate with each other, but these users should be able to communicate with router, or these users should able to communicate with ISP. Or my scenario can be different. Let's say this is my switch, and on this switch I have some computer in sales department. These two computers are in sales department. Let's say I have two more computers in marketing department, and there are one computer, this is computer of, let's say, HR, and this is computer of a content. Getting my point? So what I want, and here is one more computer of manager. So what I want, that sales department user can communicate with sales user but cannot communicate with marketing, and marketing department cannot communicate with sales department or to HR or to a content, but all users should be able to communicate with manager computer. Manager should be able to communicate with all machine. So these type of tasks can be achieved by VLAN ACL also, but there you have to run lots of command. Like in this scenario, if I have put this interface in VLAN 10, let's say VLAN 10, VLAN 20, VLAN 30 and VLAN 40. So I want that these users should able to communicate with router 1, or this router is connected with internet, so these users should be able to access internet. So what I need to do here, I need to create SVI interface, right? Virtual interface, sub interfaces, because inter VLAN routing. Here we need to perform inter VLAN routing. So you will create how many number of virtual interface there? You will create 4 number of sub interface. One for VLAN 10, let's say 0/0.10. This is for VLAN 10, and here you will define one different IP address. You have to change the IP address as well to the machine. Let's say now this machine is using IP 10.1.1.1, this machine is using 20.1.1.1, this machine is using 30.1.1.1, and this machine is using 40.1.1.1, right? And the gateway IP address of this user is, let's say, 10.1.1.255. gateway of VLAN 20 is 20.1.1.255. gateway of VLAN 30 is 30.1.1.255, and VLAN gateway of 40 is, let's say, 40.1.1.255, 254. Now we can make inter VLAN communication through this also, and after that I will configure ACL. Through ACL I will stop communication between PC1 to PC2, PC2 to 3 to 4, like, so that these user cannot communicate with each other. So here also I need to run lots of command, yes or no. First I have to create a virtual interface, 4 virtual interface on routers. I have to change IP configuration on all PC. I have to change gateway configuration from all PC. After that I will configure access control list to stop the communication between LAN users, yes or no. So we have this problem. So this task, this requirement can be achieved by private VLAN very easily. This task means these users should not be able to communicate with each other, but these users should be able to communicate with router 1 or able to access internet. So this task can be achieved easily with the help of private VLAN. So that is the reason why we come up with private VLAN. Okay, so hope till now if it is clear to you, then I am going to start the concept of private VLAN. And guys, I have designed this topology in my rack. Here you can see this is my rack. In my rack I have switch 1 and PC1, PC2, PC3 and PC4 and one router. I have one router. Okay, all PC have IP address. This is not actually PC, this is router, but I have disabled the routing. I am using this PC as a end devices. Okay, and you can see ping 10.1.1.2. PC1 is able to ping PC2. I am going to reduce this diagram so that this topology should be visible to you. Okay, you can see PC1 is able to ping PC2. After that, PC1 is able to ping PC2 also, PC3 also, right? Able to ping PC4 also. Okay, and able to PC1 is able to ping their gateway also, 254, able to ping their gateway also. So just I have designed same topology in my rack. These are real devices because we can not run some command in simulation software. That's why I am going to perform this lab on real devices. First of all, understand some terms of private VLAN, then we will move to configuration part. And if anyone have confusion to understand why we need private VLAN, so let me make you understand one more scenario, guys. Let's say, see, here I have one switch. Let me discuss one more scenario. This is my again switch, and this switch have connected with one server. Let's say some HTTP server. There are two HTTP server for load balancing. To share the load, I have two HTTP server, two FTP server, let's say, is also there. FTP, 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 and there is one, let's say, DHCP server and one DNS server is there. DNS server, and this switch is connected with one router. This router is connected with ISP, and outside user every day, outside user, this is outside user, these are outside user are accessing this server every day, right? That is fine. But here on this particular switch, what I want, that HTTP server should be able to communicate with other HTTP server, FTP server should be able to communicate with other FTP server, but HTTP and FTP, there should be no any communication between HTTP server and FTP. These two server cannot communicate with these two server, or this server cannot communicate with DNS server or DHCP server. Okay, and DNS server cannot communicate with DHCP server, FTP server cannot communicate with HTTP server or DHCP server or DNS server. Whenever your requirement is like this, then you have to configure private VLAN only. Okay, so now I am going to open Paint, and in the Paint I am going to make you some terms. Let me tell you some terms about private VLAN. So guys, private VLAN is, there are two types of VLAN in private VLAN. First of all, there are two types of VLAN in private VLAN. Number one is, let me talk one by one. Number one is, there are two types of private VLAN. Number one is primary private VLAN, primary VLAN, and second one is secondary VLAN. Secondary VLAN. Okay, inside the primary VLAN we will create secondary VLAN, and all secondary VLAN can communicate with primary VLAN. Getting my point? Let's understand one more concept here. Again, there are two types of secondary VLAN. Okay, first of all, I told you that inside the primary VLAN I will create secondary VLAN, and there are two types of secondary VLAN. Number one is community VLAN, and second one is isolated VLAN. Isolated VLAN. These two are types of secondary VLAN. There are two types of secondary VLAN: community and isolated. In one primary VLAN we can create max to max one isolated VLAN. In one primary VLAN we can create max to max one isolated VLAN, and we can create any number of community VLAN. Okay, now understand community VLAN and isolated VLAN one by one. Community VLAN first. Community VLAN can communicate here. Inside in community VLAN we can say inter community VLAN is not possible. Means between community VLAN communication is not possible, and intra community VLAN communication is possible. Intra VLAN communication is possible. Means, let's say, okay, in the example I am going through one example I am going to make you understand this again, don't worry. Till now I have told you that there are two types of private VLAN, primary and secondary. Inside a primary VLAN we can create secondary VLAN, and there are two types of secondary VLAN: community VLAN and isolated VLAN. There can be max to max one isolated VLAN in one primary VLAN, and there can be any community VLAN. After that I told you that inter community VLAN communication is not possible, and intra community VLAN communication is possible. Okay, and isolated. Now let's talk about isolated. So we can, first of all, we can have maximum one isolated VLAN. This is the first point about isolated VLAN. After that, again, here in isolated VLAN, inter as well as intra isolated VLAN communication is not possible. Means, let's say I have assigned two computer in a single isolated VLAN, so that two computer cannot communicate with each other. If I have assigned two computer in a single community VLAN, so those two computer can communicate with each other. Getting my point? Let me make you understand here with one example. Let's say this is my switch, and I have created one community VLAN, let's say 10, and I have assigned these two interface in community VLAN 10. So these two users can communicate with each other, and I have created one more community, and in that community I have assigned these two interface, let's say community 20. So this is in community 10, this is in community 20. Community 10 and 20 cannot communicate with each other. Inter-community VLAN communication is not possible. And if I have assigned, let's say this interface is in isolated VLAN. Here I have created one isolated VLAN, let's say 30. So I have assigned this port in isolated VLAN 30. So this computer cannot communicate with these two as well as these two, and we cannot create more than one isolated VLAN. And let's say here I have one more computer in VLAN 30 in same isolated community VLAN, isolated VLAN. So these two computers are member of same isolated VLAN. So these two users cannot communicate with each other, because as I told you, inter as well as intra isolated VLAN communication is not possible. And whatever VLAN here I have created, like community 10, community 20 and community 30, I will create these VLAN inside the primary VLAN. So let's say here is my router number 1 and this router is primary VLAN. So this interface is in, let's say, VLAN 100, and VLAN 100 is my primary VLAN. Okay, so I have primary VLAN over here in my topology. Let me take you to topology here. In this topology, I am going to create one primary VLAN, primary VLAN 100, and I will assign this port in primary VLAN 100, because primary interface can communicate with all secondary interfaces, and these ports will be the member of secondary VLAN. So inside this primary VLAN I will create 2 number of, let's say, secondary VLAN, or let's say 4 number of community VLAN. Secondary VLAN I am going to create 4 number of community, right? One for this, one for this interface, one for this interface, and one for this interface. Or I can create 2 number of community. I am going to create 2 community VLAN, let's say VLAN 10 and VLAN 20. I will assign these 2 interface in community VLAN 10, and I will assign these 2 ports in VLAN, community VLAN 30. And after that I don't have any port for the isolated VLAN. So later on I will show you the practical of that. First of all, let me configure private VLAN over here in this topology. Okay, so on switch number 1 I will create one primary VLAN, that is VLAN 100. After that I will create 2 community VLAN, that is secondary VLAN, and I will assign PC1 and PC2 in VLAN 10, community VLAN 10, and PC3 and PC4 in community VLAN 20. Done. And before starting configuration, let me tell you about the mode of ports as well. Guys, in private VLAN there are 2 modes of port. First one is promiscuous modes of port. So there are 2 modes of port. First one is promiscuous, and second one is host. Guys, port mode of the primary VLAN interface will be promiscuous, and the port role means mode of port of the secondary VLAN will be host. So these ports mode will be host, and this port 0/90 port will be promiscuous. Okay, now we don't have any theory part here. Let me discuss practical. I am going to first configure switch number 1. So on switch number 1 I will create VLAN 100 first. So let me take you here. On switch 1 I am going to create VLAN 100. VLAN 100, that is my primary VLAN. VLAN 100, this is my primary VLAN. After that, here I am going to say private VLAN and community. Private VLAN community. And before it, if you want to check, here I need to say primary first. Private VLAN primary. This is VLAN 100 is my primary VLAN. Okay, and now if you will check show VLAN brief. So VLAN brief. See, VLAN 100 is there, but we are not able to see this is private or normal VLAN, right? So you will run command like this: show VLAN, and after that primary VLAN. Show VLAN, primary VLAN. This command will show you. See, VLAN 100 is primary VLAN. VLAN 100 is primary VLAN. This command will show you. This is the command to check private VLAN. Okay. After that, as I told you that on this particular switch, I will create, 2 community VLAN. So let me create 2 community VLAN. Here, I'm going to create, let's say, VLAN 10, and I am going to say private VLAN community. Private VLAN community. That's it. After that, VLAN 20 and private VLAN community. Okay, so till now I have created VLAN 100, VLAN 10 and VLAN 20, and we have defined the primary and community VLAN also. And if you want to create isolated VLAN also, you can create VLAN 30, and then we can say private VLAN isolated. That's it, very simple. Okay, after that if you will check, so VLAN, private VLAN, you can see we have some VLAN over here. First one is primary VLAN, that is 100. After that, these are secondary VLAN. Here you can see secondary, here this is primary. So this is primary VLAN. VLAN 10, 20 and 30 is the secondary VLAN. And VLAN 20 and 30 are community VLAN, and VLAN 30 is isolated VLAN. VLAN 10, 20 is the community VLAN, and VLAN 30 is the isolated VLAN. Okay, and VLAN 100 is the primary VLAN. Now we need to do what? We need to actually associate the private VLAN. So go to VLAN 100, and here I am going to say private VLAN associate 10, 20 and 30. I have associated these three VLAN in primary VLAN, right? So actually, you know why it is required? Because you have created this secondary VLAN for this primary VLAN, right? So I am associating the secondary VLAN in primary VLAN. Okay, so in VLAN 100 I have run command private VLAN associated 10, 20 and 30. Okay, after that if you will run command so VLAN and private VLAN, so VLAN, private VLAN. Okay, so this is output is same here. Okay, now let me put the interfaces in VLAN. So first of all, interface F1/0/19, that means which is connected to router. This interface will be in VLAN 100 in primary VLAN. So I am going to say switch port mode private VLAN, and mode of this interface will be, as I told you, there are two types of mode. One is Prometheus and one is host. So your primary VLAN interface mode should be Prometheus, and your secondary VLAN interface mode should be host. So I have defined here Prometheus, and go to REST interface like interface F1/0/1, which is connected with PC1. I am going to set switch port mode private VLAN, and mode should be what? Host for the secondary VLAN. In the same way for interface F1/0/2, which is connected to PC number 2, I am going to say switch port mode private VLAN host. Do same thing for F1/0/3 also, and switch port mode private VLAN host. And for interface F1/0/4 also, which is connected with PC2, switch port mode private VLAN host. Okay, so I have defined mode as well on all interfaces. Now next thing that we need to do is, till now we have configured primary VLAN, secondary VLAN, we have associate the secondary VLAN in primary VLAN. After that we have defined the mode to each interfaces. I have defined the mode to each interfaces. Now I am going to assign, you know, the interfaces which are connected with PC into VLAN. Like 0/1 should be in VLAN 10, PC1 should be in VLAN 10. So interface F1/0/1, and switch port private VLAN switch port private VLAN host association primary VLAN ID. See, primary VLAN ID is 100, and then secondary VLAN ID is 10. I'm going to put this interface in secondary VLAN 10. That's it. I will do same thing for REST interface, like for f1/0/2, and let me say run this command here. Okay, so now 0/1 and 0/2 ports are member of VLAN 10, and I am going to use range command for interface range f1/0/3 to 4. 3 to 4. These two interfaces should be in VLAN 20. So switch port private VLAN host association primary VLAN 100 and secondary VLAN 20. So these two interfaces are in VLAN 20 now. These two interfaces are in VLAN 20. Okay, and after that I have to map the secondary VLAN with primary VLAN on primary interface. So go to interface f1/0/19, and here you will run command switch port private VLAN, I think mapping, yes, mapping, and then primary VLAN ID 100 and secondary VLAN. How many VLAN you want to map? 10, 20 and 30. 10, 20 and 30. That's it. This is the only configuration. Now if you will run command show VLAN and private VLAN, you can see in VLAN 100 there is one interface, that is fast Ethernet 0/90, and in community VLAN 10 we have two interface. See, these all interface, primary interface as well as secondary interface. f1/0, f2/0 is member of this community VLAN, and this community VLAN have 0/3, 0/4 and 0/90. So 0/90, which is primary, is a member of both community VLAN. So now let me check the connectivity from PC number 1. Ping 10.1.1.2. I'm able to ping PC2. Am I able to ping PC3? No, I cannot ping PC number 3 because PC3 belongs to different community VLAN, and as you know, inter community VLAN communication is not possible. In the same way, I cannot ping to PC4 also, but I can ping gateway IP address. I can ping internet. Getting my point? Okay, PC1 is not able to ping PC4 also, but ping 10.1.1.254. I'm able to ping the gateway. Yes. In the same way, PC2 can ping to PC1 and gateway. PC1 10.1.1.1. I'm able to ping and ping 10.1.1.254. I'm able to ping the gateway, but I cannot ping PC3. Not ping PC3, and PC3 can ping PC4 only. Ping 10.1.1.4. Yes, it is able to ping, and it is not able to ping PC2, but it is able to ping router gateway IP address. That means this user can access internet, but PC1 and PC2 cannot communicate with PC3 and PC4, and PC3 and PC4 cannot communicate with PC1 and PC2. Done. So hope it is clear. And now guys, we have one more concept, that is isolation. So if you want to put any interface in isolated VLAN, so command will be very simple. Let's say I am going to put 0/4 interface in isolated VLAN. Interface f1/0/4. Interface, sorry, on switch 1. Interface f1/0/4, and after that here we will say switch port private VLAN host association VLAN 100 and VLAN 30. Okay, and if I will put 0/3 interface also in isolated VLAN, switch port private VLAN host association 100 and 30. So I have put these two interface, means PC4 and PC3, in isolated VLAN. So now PC3 and PC4 can also not communicate with each other. You can see if you will ping PC4 now, PC4, you can see ping will not work. Ping will not work because two isolated VLAN cannot communicate. Same isolated VLAN cannot communicate with each other, right? Inter as well as intra isolated VLAN communication is not possible. Okay, so this is all about private VLAN. If you have learned something from this video, guys, if you have like this video, please hit on like button. If you have not subscribed the channel, please subscribe this channel. We will meet soon in next video. Till then, stay safe. Bye bye.